for a totally romantic second after they each come collectively and percentage a kiss. Because of the excessive feelings, Kim Do-sik begins a fall floating with inside the air. Whilst kissing Miss Lee Mi-hyun day after today, Mr. Minutes once more requires Miss Lee Hyun and asks her to file on her assignment pass over. Lee Hyun is aware of approximately the name of the game of Kim Do-il this time, however she tells Mr. Minutes that she nevertheless has not discovered it. Noticeably, Mr. Minutes doesn't display any terrible conduct. Closer to her, listening to this, he simply asks her if her assignment is finished and that she would not ought to do whatever. However, he's the top of an intelligence company, he has different plans too. He's assembly with Miss Lee Mi-hyun's manager and assigning her this different undertaking. Surely Mr. Guys has already come to understand the mystery of Kim Dick. He has been retaining a watch on him from more than one angles for the reason that incident of that traitor's assignment failure. He knew that Kim Dick and Miss Lee Hyun went towards his orders in the course of that assignment. In his view, humanity is not anything with regards to the crowning glory of its assignment. The killing of many innocents only for the sake of one killing of a traitor isn't a big sacrifice in his eyes. So now he is aware of that Miss Lee Mi-hyun is telling to deceive him, and actually she additionally is aware of the mystery of Kim Dick. Whilst the secretary of Mr. Minutes leaves his workplace after serving the espresso to them, Mr. Minutes is talking approximately the lie of Miss Lee Hyun with the manager of Miss Lee Mi-hyun. The secretary overhears this conversation and tells Miss Lee Mi-hyun on the decision that Mr. Minutes is aware of approximately her lie. She is doing this prefer to her due to the fact Miss Lee Mi-hyun had helped in advance via way of means of giving recommendation approximately her dressing and espresso. After listening to this, Miss Lee Mi-hyun assessments for any hidden cameras, after which she unearths one in the front of her PC. Additionally, there may be one with inside the espresso system wherein Miss Lee Mi-hyun and Kim Do-sik used to speak. So now Mr. Minutes calls Miss Lee Mi-hyun and reprimands her for hiding the reality from her boss. She loses her photo and profession function. Even in addition, with inside the organization that nighttime Kim Dick involves see Miss Lee Min. However, he can't come toward her due to the fact he can be stuck doing this. He is asking at her as though he goes someplace away. The tale shifts to the younger days of one while he used to work for an online casino proprietor. Someday he gets a message from the proprietor that a gang mafia has occupied their online casino and he's with a big range of fellows, so it's far tough to make him depart the online casino. Then one is going to him and fights single-handedly with all of his guys. He even stabs himself open to reveal his gallbladder to the gangster and try and threaten him. In the long run he succeeds in getting again the online casino. All of us bows down for him as he does an excellent feat all on my own. While he's with inside the restroom, the assistant of Juan Minnie comes and facilitates in casting off the stabbed knives from the frame of one with inside. The interim Jan has been dwelling on my own in a lodge and would not pop out regularly. He most effective comes out while the lodge proprietor asks for cash. He is going to the road and is derived in the front of the auto. While the auto hits him, he pretends to get harmed badly, after which needs the cash from the auto proprietor. For now, no longer going to the police. On this manner Juan is earning profits and deciding to buy his life on the lodge. There he additionally comes throughout a girl who used to return back to that lodge to serve espresso to the citizens of that lodge. He sees a person behaving very badly in that lodge, however would not react to it. Later someday, while he's out on the street once more in and try and make a few cash, he receives hit with the aid of using a vehicle. However, the vehicle proprietor would not prevent there and runs after hitting him, so Juan runs at the back of him crying he'll sue the auto proprietor for hit and run. In the meantime, that espresso girl comes there on her scooter and gives her assist. However, Juan says that he would not want any assist, besides that he desires to understand the area of the police station due to the fact he's terrible with instructions. The espresso girl indicates him the instructions, which Jan forgets once more quickly. The call of that girl is G and R. Jan is absolutely flat for her now. After a few days, Jan sees that his proprietor goes to address the gangster. In addition, they welcome Juan into their celebration. However, Juan is indignant with them. He doesn't need to be a part of the enemy organization, but they feel that they need them to settle all of the disputes among them. However, in truth, Minky has combined something with inside the drink which makes each of them subconscious. Very quickly, while one opens his eyes, he unearths himself tied to the automobile seats alongside together along with his boss. Juan frees himself and kills the gangster. However, Minnie begins involved pleading for his lifestyles. Juan indicates a few mercy on him and simply rips his cheek together along with his handcuffs. He leaves the online casino without killing him. Lower back in his rental, Juan calls the espresso save and asks them to supply a few espresso to his room. In the meantime, he shaves his beard and receives geared up to welcome Jahi there. Alas, a few different girl got here with espresso to his room. He liquids that espresso quick and once more requires any other order of espresso. After a while, this time once more the shipping lady isn't always G. So Jan ordered the espresso for the 1/3 time to his proper success. This time Jahi comes herself with the espresso. Seeing her, Juan turns into very satisfied and welcomes her into his room warmly. He gives her a few cash to take a seat down there and simply communicate to him. Jahi is a touch bit stressful, however she stays there till Juan ends his espresso and leaves. While she is going out, Jan asks her to return back once more every time he orders espresso. Lower back on the espresso save, Jahi tells the proprietor of the store that the man is absolutely flat on her. He needs her to return back on every occasion every time he orders espresso. So day after today, the proprietor once more sends Jahi to supply the espresso to Jan. With inside the room, she spends a variety of time with Jan, chatting approximately unique things. At the side of Jan, she additionally enjoys espresso day by day. Jan has spent all of his cash on espresso and now he's left with nothing. While he's out of the motel, a few goons from a room order the espresso and Jahi receives espresso for them. However, the one's goons begin teasing her and G fights with them in her protection. With inside the intervening time, Juan is lower back and he hears Jahi's cries from a room. He is going into the close by room and begins evolved smashing into the wall. He goes to interrupt the wall due to the fact the goons aren't starting the door. Sooner or later he succeeds in smashing via the wall as soon as he enters the room. One of the bullies throws a wine bottle at Juan, however he stands there frivolously. Even though his head begins involved bleeding, he beats they all one at a time, after which stacks their bodies right into a room. He then asks the proprietor to fasten the door and now no longer tell anybody approximately the incident. The proprietor herself is scared of Jan, so she consents without asking any questions. Later, Jan calls Jahi and asks her to live careful of horrific humans. In the meantime, the complete gang of goons involves the lodge to take revenge on their guys from Juan. They beat him badly, however Jan is likewise a badass. He bears all of the wounds, after which beats them and go back. He fights with extra than 100 guys by myself in that resort, additionally at the side of all the one's weapons being utilized by his combatants. In the meantime, Jahi is again from the health center. Once you have remedy for her wounds, she hears that Juan become attacked on the lodge through many gangsters at a time, so she receives concerned for him and quick leaves to Pier 1. There may be any other gang simply at that point to conquer Juan. They're the guys of Minnie, who's with Mr. Minutes at that time. Minnie is there to exhibit the energy of the monster to Mr. Minister. Seeing his powers, Mr. Minutes asks his guy Kim Dusik to take Jan into his crew as he might be beneficial to them. Jahi unearths Jan at the streets being chased through many goons, so he asks Jan to take a seat down together along with her on her scooter. Jan hesitates due to the fact he doesn't need to place Jahi into problems. However, Jahi shouts out to the gangsters that she is Jan's female friend. At this, Jan quick sits at the back of her and asks her to depart. They quickly depart the metropolis on a scooter, and Juan thank you Jahi for saving his lifestyles. Unexpectedly, a van comes from the front facet of the street and hits their scooty badly. Jan covers Jahi absolutely in order that she might now no longer get extreme accidents from the autumn. Then he stands up and faces the van, which is prepared to strike him once more. Jan runs in the direction of it and breaks the front display screen of the van. Then he actions the steerage wheel and makes the van fall into the valley close by on himself. With inside the interim, Minnie has come there and he factors the gun at Jan to absolutely stop his lifestyles. However, unexpectedly he receives a shot into his personal head through a person at the back of him. It's Far Kim Dick, whose status with inside the air and looking Juan has now joined in this and is operating beneath Neth Kim Dick. He's requested through Mr. Minutes to comply with all of the orders of Kim Dusk. After some days, Kim, Dusk and Won get geared up for his or her subsequent task. Dick incorporates Ju-on and throws him from the air onto a constructing, in which many gangsters are gifted with their weapons. The assassins with inside the constructing suppose he is useless, however the subsequent 2D he receives up Ju-on begins a evolved coping with the assassins with inside the room, and Dick flies right all the way down to cooperate with him. Collectively they cope with everybody with inside the room and effectively locate the goal of the task, who's a physician they want to deliver again. However, Dick can most effective fly with one individual, and he chooses to take the medical doctor and Jan to go back on his very own lengthy tail. Brief. Won and Dick emerge as the high-quality companions operating for his or her state with their unique competencies. Quickly Dick runs into hassle he refuses to carry out a assignment assigned with the aid of using the director, which results in him being driven with the aid of using all of the unique dealer's dual attempts to face up to. However, to his marvel, the lady he loves the maximum factors a gun at him. He falls to the floor and surrenders. Without a combat, Won desires to rescue his accomplice, however is stopped with the aid of using a look from him after the incident of that night time. Dick disappears without a hint ever given that then he's long gone. However, it seems he doesn't kill the director, he just hangs him on a tree. The director is demoted due to this incident. The black dealers of the Safety Bureau are disbanded as a end result. Lee Mi-hyun returns to a everyday existence some years later whilst the entirety has calmed down. That Dick ultimately seems in the front of her. Dick and Miss Lee Mi-hyun get married, now no longer lengthy, when they have a child, who additionally suggests remarkable expertise only some months after beginning, which makes Dick and Miss Lee Mi-hyun very worried. Duok made essential preparations in order that Bong-seok couldn't get himself harmed because of his flying cap potential, whilst Bong-se was some years vintage. The director regains his vintage function. Dick and Miss Lee Mi-hyun understand the hassle is coming, so that they live each day and worry. One night time, Lee hears many footsteps out of doors. Dick does not need to contain her and their son, so he lets her get away with the kid. Even as he is going out to cope with the unique dealers, Dick takes a hostage and flies to a much place. He desires to entice those dealers away to present Lee and Kim a risk to get away. However, the dealers who come this night are all superhumans. It does not take lengthy for Dick to be injured and fall to the floor. He attempts to fly away, however is pulled down with the aid of using a superhuman with first-rate energy. Dick's attempts difficult to interrupt loose and fly into the sky. However, the superhuman with first-rate energy pulls on his rope, now no longer letting him go away from these days. Lee has in no way heard from him once more. She increases Bong-yo by myself on the alternative facet. One works as an everyday worker in a organization no person is aware of approximately his beyond. He additionally ultimately unearths Jae-hee and marries her. Their bond is especially sturdy and Ju-on is content material with this existence. However, then soon a roar later, Mr. Minutes seeks him out. He asks Jan to assist with the assignment if Jan efficaciously completes it. Mr. Minutes can re-establish the Black Agent Group 1. Additionally has the same opinion as he does now no longer need to keep his mediocre lifestyles anymore. Mr. Minutes sends him to the Navy. Their assignment is to counter the forces of North Korea. He additionally sends any other guy nicknamed Sniffer to help Ju-on in locating the assignment's goal. Ju-on is pressured via way of means of this. He thinks that Mr. Minutes has any other reason. Someday the Navy is ambushed from all aspects. Ju-on desires to assist, however Sniffer holds him again. It seems that Ju-on has dispatched Sniffer to discover a superhuman from North Korea and that they want to pressure this superhuman out earlier than Ju-on can act. However, Ju-on isn't always the type to face via way of means of and watch others die. He pushes beyond Sniffer and dashes into the battlefield, however earlier than he can act. Endless stones come rolling down the mountain main. The others. Janu faces the venture head-on. He realizes this isn't always a herbal landslide, it's far the paintings of a superhuman with the electricity to transport huge items. The superhuman at the mountain continues putting and sending stones flying regardless of the chance drawn. Agilely dodges every stone in view that Jan isn't always in clean goal. The superhuman abandons the operation and leaves the scene again. At domestic, his spouse Jae-hee is continually involved. Approximately his paintings on every occasion she waves him goodbye. Her smile vanishes immediately. Someday, noticing his spouse's Stupid expressions. One asks if something is bothering her whilst he learns that she needs for a kid he comes to a decision to fulfill. Her want the subsequent 12 months that they'd a daughter named Hisu after turning into a father. One feels a sturdy pull to go back domestic on every occasion he leaves as quickly as his missions quit. He rushes again with a realistic daughter and a loving spouse. Jan feels just like the luckiest guy with inside the international. Someday after completing assignment, Jan gets a Telecel smartphone name. His spouse and daughter have met with an intense automobile coincidence. Even as his daughter is in the main unhurt, his spouse dies at the spot. Juan left his Navy activity after that and began out being concerned approximately his daughter. The tale then shifts to give an explanation for the origins of Gong Hun's father, whose call is Janjman, is an electricity manipulator and might effortlessly raise over 1,000 pounds. However, he's bad at easy math with restricted intelligence. He's simplest able to guide hard work. Happily he has a being concerned spouse who is continually involved that he is probably taken gain of. Someday Jman's spouse joins a neighborhood dealer rights organization to defend her meals stall. However, the demolishing crew is just too brutal or even begins if evolved assaulting the companies. Jman waits at domestic for a long term while she doesn't go back. Jman and Gong Hyun exit to search for her, seeing her being pressured away with the aid of using the demolishing crew. Jman loses his mood, ignoring the danger of exposing himself. He assaults certainly considered one among them apart and jumps onto the automobile to rescue his spouse. However, the guys assault him with water and he quickly collapses. His spouse, realizing the chance, tells him to depart fast. Then Jman jumps 10 meters excessive to get away. Mr. Minutes then calls in Juan to deal with John. Upon listening to approximately Ya, Juan fast arrives on the scene, studying that Ya has fled into the underground tunnels. Juan is going in to song him down. In spite of Jman's confined intelligence, he recalls his spouse's recommendation to defend himself. While he sees that Juan is there to seize him, he without delay throws Juan out. However, Juan's wounds heal very fast. Seeing this, Jman realizes that Juan is like him now. Juan has no preference however to knock John subconscious. 5 minutes later, Jan emerges with a baby he rescued from the tunnels. He does not take Jan with him due to the fact Jman is resolute, approximately going domestic to his son enormously. After Jan returns domestic, he does not run away. He has promised Gong Hun that he be domestic earlier than 10 and he intends to hold that promise. The daddy and son embody tightly. Quickly Mr. Minutes methods. He sends Jman into detention and fixes his eyes on Gong Hun. Jman would possibly have confined intelligence, however if he can teach his son, he might be a terrific asset with inside the destiny foreseeing capacity. Chance Wan concerns that his daughter Hisu would possibly fall into the director's palms. In order that very night time he secretly takes Hisu and leaves the town. Years later he opens a fried bird save and Hisu has grown right into a younger female. However, Juan's troubles aren't over due to the fact there's a superpower user at Hisu's excessive faculty. It is Jman's son Gong Hun. Gong Hun's presence has been observed with the aid of using Mr. Minutes. Additionally, his spy sniffer tells approximately Hisu and Bongak analyzing with inside the identical faculty. After that, everyone the scenes show up which we have already visible in advance. Hyu Bongak and Gong Hun's paths are crossed with every different it change into all a plan of Mr. Minutes to establish a faculty, entice the youngsters in and lure them from inside. At the floor, sniffer acts because the faculty's most important. However, in truth he stays a black agent assigned to display those proficient college students. At this factor, Hisu and Bong Seek unfastens the restraints that generally suppress his flight cap potential and launches into the air, bursting via the high home windows. He manages to capture his midfall, after which he lands properly. In the meantime, Lee has recognized, after which subdued the janitor. Then she cuts the lighting in order that no person can see her via surveillance cameras. Alternatively, whilst Juan is talking with the trainer, different marketers burst into the room with bloodless expressions. They call for the documents at the young superhumans. One of the marketers additionally reveals Gong Hun. Fortuitously, Gong Hun's mom, sensing threat, contacts Gong Hun's father Jan, who races in the direction of the college on Juan's facet. He engages in fight with a great power enemy. His fists land with such pressure that the agent is momentarily crushed. However, the enemy recovers speedy with inside the interim. Miss Lee returns to the janitor she had formerly subdued and kills her in some other place. Mr. Choi assaults an agent, however in doing this he sacrifices his very own existence. Won takes a brutal hit and all at once reveals himself not able to move. They beat him till his face is slightly recognizable. Best then does he realize he has underestimated their power again with inside the fitness center bunk and has to try and fend off the effective agent. However, their loss of education leaves them vulnerable regardless of their abilities. They're speedy, overpowered and knocked down. Gong Hyun additionally stands up immediately towards the marketers and succeeds in saving his existence. He transfers the documents to a secure region. Passover Lee comes immediately to an agent who claims that their struggling commenced due to the fact a South Korean guy named De got here to their state. He turned into arrested via way of means of the Intelligence Bureau. Over a decade in the past, the South Korean authorities had dispatched Dick on a covert assassination mission focused on the North Korean president. North Korea had no superhumans again, and so from that point North Korea additionally began out recruiting superhumans. In flashbacks we see how those North Korean marketers had been solid via ruthless and inhumane choice technique in North Korea. Applicants suspected of latent powers had been compelled to leap off a cliff inside a minute. In the event that they failed to, they had been shot from in the back of via way of means of squaddies. Best people who ought to continue to exist in the autumn and climb again up had been taken into consideration. Certified superhumans that turned into survival of the fittest in its cruelest shape. They also have an agent powered via way of means of a terrifying great power agent. He's a person in sunshades. He were raised in a cave his whole existence because of the threat of his powers. His expertise is the potential to control air with a trifling wave. He ought to reason devastating airwaves able to collapsing homes. They're sporting him with inside the trunk of the automobile whilst they are outnumbered. The bullet way to her recuperation powers. She could get better quick. This urges Bong seek to move ahead and store the others after Yaw and the others manipulate to carve out and get away course from the rubble. Won quick makes a plan pretending to assault the person in sunshades with a bit of iron. He secretly creates a gap for Jmin. Seizing the instant, Jmin launches a wonder assault. He overpowers the sunshades beast or even disables his palms to save you any similarly chance. He then throws the beast out from the window. This makes the complete constructing at the financial institution of crumble simply. Then the sturdy guy is available and knocks Juan to the floor with a sturdy pressure. However, Jan is nonetheless preventing with him. By myself, seeing all of us in hassle, Bong Seek comes ahead for assist. However, the flying agent stops him via way of means of pointing a gun at him. Lee simply then comes out for her son and factors the gun on the flying guy. However, the trouble is that there may be any other agent with a gun for Miss Lee. Thankfully, Chu Tai-hyu comes for assist and gathers all his energy. He electrocutes the flying guy, sending him right all the way down to the floor. There have been too many casualties that night. North and South Korean superhumans have been seriously injured. Many had died. The person in sunshades in his very last moments urges the energy agent to stay a regular existence. That's why with tears in his eyes the great energy guy stops preventing and refuses to serve North Korea anymore. He runs into Hisu at the manor. She comforts him with kindness. At the rooftop, one agent is left at the back of. He sees the situations round him and curses the governments for making their very own human beings combat towards every difference. So he permit Bongi and Won to stay. He chooses to devote the unthinkable via way of means of leaping off the constructing with inside the coming days. Existence will come lower back to regular. Juan and Ms. Lee end up new heroes of the city. Bong Kyu and Gong Hun all graduated and organized for a brand new existence. The flying North Korean agent returns to North Korea and kills his authentic who's chargeable for the struggling. Then he frees Dick and collectively they're making plans to overthrow the corrupt leaders of each countries. Nobody could use superhumans as guns once more. Won is lower back at his fried chicken. Save this time with a brand new worker who's the great energy guy. For the primary time the person is now not a weapon. He is simply satisfied with inside. The very last scene, Kim Dick involves his own circle of relatives and reunites with them for a satisfied existence.